Do you remember that one episode of George Lopez, Season 1, Episode 1? I believe it's labeled Prototype. It follows George as he settles into a new position at work as manager. At first, he's excited and filled with glee at his new position, but this eventually turns into sorrow as he's faced with a terrible decision to fire his best friend or his own mother. We see this as the first time George actually starts to consider suicide. We see throughout the entire series he slowly gets more closer to actually committing the act itself, but that's an episode for another day. Now, we see that eventually he decides on firing his mother. Now, whenever he brings his mother to sit down in his kitchen during a family barbecue to finally break the bad news to her, she doesn't take it very well. We can assume that later on she will use this as a grudge against him in order to possibly blackmail him or sorts. The next day, he actually returns to his boss, Mr. Powers. He informs his boss that he fired his mother. Immediately, Powers is totally surprised and caught off guard. He says, "George, you were not actually supposed to fire her." George, being equally as surprised, says, What do you mean?" And Mr. Powers says, "This was a test, George. I just wanted to see if you were loyal." And George, in a rather comedic and smart way, says, "Mr. Powers, I'm bad at tests. That's why I work at a factory." Now, as soon as he learns of this info that he was not actually supposed to fire his mother and this was just a test, he is filled with so much anger, he says, "I quit," and tries to storm out the door. But Max Powers, knowing that he doesn't have any other manager to run the place, says, "George, please stay. Please, I don't have anyone to run. We're in the middle of the most important season of airplane parts right now. We need you to stay." Eventually, George negotiates a week off of work between the days of Christmas and New Year's Eve, something like that. And he also negotiates 2 weeks off of work with pay for his mother. The episode ends very heartwarmingly with him telling all the workers that he's gotten them a few extra days off, and then he goes home to his family, lies down in bed, very heartwarming in the end. If I had to rate this episode, I would probably give it a strong a 10. It's truly a masterful piece, I'd say. It really shows human nature and human emotions. It really has a raw feeling and understanding of what we have to do in order to survive, per se. Well, thank you for tuning into this first and lovely episode of Gorge Gopez, a synopsis and analysis of every episode of the George Lopez anime. I'll catch you for episode 2 of George Lopez. Farewell, and enjoy the rest of your day.